Well, I know I saw something the other day, which I'm sure you've all seen or heard about, but I thought this was rather puzzling. When Biden was referring to Putin as a killer. Well, now it's a little more complicated because it was that Stephanopoulos which brought this up, and it's a weird thing to bring up out of nowhere. The question obviously had to be kind of set up ahead of time. Somehow they felt that this was, somebody on Biden's staff thought this was a good way to make him sound tough. So, because Stephanopoulos is just a Democratic hack, he isn't really a journalist. He always has been. So this was obviously kind of planned ahead of time, but I don't know what the hell they're thinking. That it's incredibly stupid to say something like that. Even people who don't like the Russians know better than to say something like that. The whole thing behind it, they're trying to say that, oh yeah, the Russians were trying to affect the election. Well, it really wasn't that they were trying to affect it. They weren't, playing with the vote numbers and all this stuff. But the Democrats are concerned about was that, all these allegations of what Biden had been pulling in the Ukraine. Now, this is very concerning to Russia. It has been for a long time. And all the stuff that Biden did, this is all public knowledge. There's all these videos of this. This is no big secret. But for some reason, the Democrats thought this is the thing to do. We have to blame Putin for this, when it was Biden who did it and bragged about doing it, And if this influenced the election, it's nobody's fault but his own. It wasn't something that you can blame Putin for. So anyway, Stephanopoulos asked this bizarre question. And I really don't know what the hell some of these advisors are thinking, because damn well this wasn't Biden's own thought. He ain't got a thought of his own. This is something they put into his head and purposely set this question up to be asked. But like I say, just bizarre. Because there's no way anything good is going to come of this. The only thing, to his fanatic adherents who think Biden is the guy, maybe this appears to make him look tough. But then again, when you go flopping around on the steps, because you're running up steps to Air Force One, that doesn't make you look tough. That makes you look like a frail old man, which is what he is, without a thought of his own in his head. And I'm amazed, really, how patient like people like Putin are with his bizarre behavior. Because that gets old after a while. But to accuse somebody of being a killer like that, that's just way over the line. And it accomplishes nothing, except maybe the tough guy image. But there again, it's, you go back to that saying, biting off more than you can chew, or your mouth is cashing checks that your ass, or writing checks that your ass can't cash. But there is a Russian equivalent, sort of, in one of their proverbs, and they're great at these proverbs. But it goes that if you choose to dance with the bear chooses when the dancing stops. And I think that's kind of the situation we're in now, because, like I say, it's lucky that Putin knows very well what Biden is and has an incredible amount of patience with him because some people wouldn't. I mean, because it would be very easy to just lash out back at him. Instead, he kind of laughs it off and challenges him to a debate, which of course could never possibly happen. It would be great, but it would be a disaster for Biden. But it's stupid to put yourself in that kind of a position. But talking about this Ukraine deal, because there's going to be more problems there. We aren't going to leave that alone, in part because Biden is still trying to kind of cover his tracks there, which is really hard to do. Like I say, it's all public record. But we just now gave Kiev a whole bunch more money. And it used to be humanitarian aid. Well, they're not even pretending it's humanitarian aid now. We gave them a bunch of lethal aid, including a couple of patrol boats that are going to end up, the Russians are going to end up having to sink these things because they got to be pissing around, poking at them all the time. And that's why, we want to give, we can't go really poking too much at the Russians. We kind of torment the Chinese a little, but the Russians, it's a bit risky. So instead, we prop up the Ukrainians, and they go poking at Russia. But it's not going to end well. I mean, this has happened before. But it's a silly thing to be doing. I guess part of it is to distract of other stuff that's going on, and he's hoping, like I say, to still cover his tracks in the Ukraine. But it's funny because, like here now, we're always squawking about, neo-Nazis and white nationalists and white supremacists, and at the same time, this money and all this military aid that's pouring into Ukraine, with a promise of a hell of a lot more, is going to the Ukrainian military, which are, in fact, white supremacists and are actually Nazis and proud of it. I mean, they have been since back in World War II, where they were collaborating with the Nazis. It's a bizarre situation, but then to start going and calling Putin a killer, that's I really wonder about, these, like I say, he doesn't have a thought in his head. So it's his advisors that are telling him this nonsense. But it's going to get him in a world of trouble, because people, I mean, when you're dealing with somebody, you got to let it ride a little. And like I say, Putin is good about kind of laughing this stuff off. But this will only go so far. Eventually, you lose patience with this. I'm impressed. I mean, because even like that Arab and Turkish guy, he was a little pissed off about this because he's on really good terms with Russia, and he is like a NATO member. But we're always kind of squawking with him because at one time we tried to overthrow his country, though we pretend we didn't, but we actually did, and it didn't work out. But we're doing this all the time, instigating little troubles. And usually it involves us giving a whole bunch of military aid to rebels, but this goes on and on. But a funny thing too, when I talked the other day about that Sputnik vaccine, they just intercepted, the Mexican authorities intercepted this shipment of fake stuff, of fake vaccine of the Sputnik stuff that came in, landed in Mexico, but it was en route to someplace else. I believe it was Honduras it was actually destined for. But they've been kind of watching for this because they expect, like I said, the Sputnik stuff is superior to anything else that's out there. But we have been bad-mouthing it. And so now this fake stuff that they caught, they're pretty sure, they're still investigating exactly who was behind this. But they have suspicions that it was some of our non-governmental organizations, which actually a lot of times is really CIA. It's kind of how we work. You can't say, oh, it's directly CIA. It's little offshoots of the CIA that do this. But there's a great suspicion it was them, and also they're tying in George Soros with this. They figure he's behind this. And now, he always ends up to be, if there's evil going on someplace, you'll find his fingers in this someplace. And they're pretty sure he was involved in this too. But it'll be interesting when this shakes down, if the truth ever comes out. It won't come out on our major news networks, but what they're trying to do is if they can try to make it sound like this stuff is going to kill people and make people sick and stuff like some of the stuff that we've come up with does. So they put together this fake stuff, but now they're going to analyze this and see exactly what this was. Because what they're afraid of, like I say, it was some that was designed to make people sick or actually kill people. Just to give the Sputnik a bad name. Because like I say, we're perfectly fine. If people in other countries die, to keep the Russian influence out, we're perfectly fine with that. And that's what they were trying to pull with this. But it'll be interesting, to find out what comes of this in the end. But I was glad to hear that they were aware that this could happen, and they had kind of an eye out for this sort of stuff, and they caught it. But it was obviously, counterfeit. The bottles, the labeling was all wrong and stuff. It was like in Cyrillic, but it was kind of like misspelled in Cyrillic, so it was somebody trying to pull, and I don't think it was some private people trying to scam, as a money-making deal. They're pretty sure, and I can see this happening, that it was somebody, some organization, purposely trying to do this just to ruin the reputation of that product. It's interesting to see, but like I say, the odds of us actually hearing what becomes of that are pretty slim. But I'm glad to see that they're watching for that. But I always think, our CIA is a rogue bunch that does a lot of little dirty deeds on their own. That our politicians can deny it, but it goes on all the time. I mean, even if you go back to like that whole deal in Libya, when they tried to blame all that rioting on that little film that somebody had made, when it actually turns out they were rioting because our CIA, was sneaking in weapons. They had a whole stockpile of weapons that they had snuck in there to give to the rebels to overthrow the legitimate government. I mean, we pull that stuff all over the place. And it's funny because the truth will come out eventually. The truth will be there. Whether you hear it or not is another matter, because our news media is kind of in on this, so the truth never really gets to the public. But if you look closely, it's all there. But man, they got to do something. And I'm sure, Biden is getting to the end of his rope here. So they're going to have to shuffle him out of there pretty soon. You have to be careful of what you say and do. And, You know, but that whole, like the running up the stairs and then flopping down, it's an attempt to make him look young and vital, and he ain't. He's a decrepit old man. You know, you walk up the steps, you don't run up the steps. You know, he's lucky he didn't go tumbling all the way to the bottom, but I'm still waiting for Hillary to give him a push. Or Harris, one or the other. But eventually, they're just going to have to get him out of there, just to be done with him, because he's going to get him, his mouth is going to get him in trouble. Well, they are in trouble now. But like I say, Putin puts up with a lot of crap that not a lot of people would put up with. He's being very patient, but that'll only go so far, you know, and eventually we're going to overstep that limit, and there is going to be repercussions. But to go threatening like that, yeah, that goes back to dancing with bears. You know, they're going to have the final word in this. It isn't going to be us. No, well, I think today is going to be windy, so I can finish tearing down this motor. I just got to take it apart and clean out in case there's any crap in there. Then I got a whole new top end to put on it. But it's got to be done sometime, and a cold, windy day is a good time to do it.